Hello guys, welcome once more to the musical channel. Okay, we are going to continue with our course that as we started. Okay, which is all about the dot crash course, and today we'll be diving into something just introduced into that 3.0. Okay, that version, which is actually called patterns, right? So we are going to talk about what are patterns, what they do, where they are allowed, and some common use cases of that for patterns. Okay, in our that code. Now, before even going ahead, okay, if you open your site tool, okay, you should be able to open your popspec.yaml, and it requires a version of at least 3.0. So you see here my SDK is 3.1.4. So I am eligible to use or make use of that patterns if you permit me to say that way. So make sure you update your code, okay, and if not, you can visit the website, okay, the that official website to get try to download the SDK, okay. If when you get that installed, right, all what you just have to run is something like this. I'm just gonna put it here. Okay, so you just have to run something like that, create dash t console, okay, and now the name of the folder, let's say for example that crash, not that crash course. Okay, so you can do something like this, creating it this way. It's actually in your terminal, right? You're going to have this whole that template generated for you. So let's dive then right into it. As usual, we'll create our patterns file. Okay, so I'm going to increase this so you can see better. Okay, I guess that should be big enough and available for those on mobile devices. Okay, so yes, this is it. So as usual, we'll create a folder in the bin folder, okay, a subfolder, and then we start with example one. Okay, example one dot and we close this, and I think you should really be familiar with the usual dance of opening this in the terminal. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. So now, what are our patterns? So patterns are just like special puzzle pieces, right, that help you bring other pieces together with it, right? So it's like a pattern is a special puzzle piece, and now you can bring other pieces together with it based on their shapes, right? So when we talk about shapes, we just mean here like the types, the number of fields, the parameter types. Okay, we're going to dive into all of that. So patterns in that just help you to find the right pieces together based on their shape. Okay, and like I earlier said, it requires a language of 3.0. You need yeah, so that's that. So let's dive into our first example. Let's say, so as usual, we do main. Okay, so if we do, so now we have what we call constant patterns. Okay, so constant pattern is something like this. We call it a switch. Okay, we have a number here, and let me try to say something like number is equals to 1. Okay, and we can say here case. Okay, number, and then we're just going to print 1. Let's just provide the default. Okay, default, and then we're just going to print something else. Okay, and then we're just going to try to get that number here. Okay, so now when I say constant pattern, right, this is what I mean. It means there is actually this is what is going to be happening behind the scenes, right? A constant pattern just means we have a constant value which we are going to match against a constant let's say constant variable, right, which obviously we don't know which value it holds, and we're going to match it against constant cases, right, because these won't change, so it's going to be specific, and as well as to have for case 2, case 3, right, and be able to provide a specific output. So if we bring our terminal up and we try running that example 1, okay, we see 1 which is printed, which is actually this, right? So now if we were to change this, for example, let's say to 10, okay, and we get that, and then we can see something else 10, Okay, so that's what we call constant um pattern, constant match pattern, right? So now, likewise, we also have something called collection pattern, right? Where we try to match um, values or an object based on collection, right? So let me comment this out, okay? And let me bring that code in so we can have something like const a is equals to a. Okay, so we can have so const b like that, and then we can have let's say we have our var here object, okay, which is equals to, let's say for example, a and b. So now we have a switch, okay, and now we're going to switch on this object that we just created, and we're going to provide a list pattern whereby we are going to have something like case, okay, a and b, and then we're just going to print a. I'm also going to print b, okay. So in this case, now we are also going to provide the default as usual, okay, just so that we can see uh, when we don't catch, it will be displayed here. Okay, so here we just say object, so as for example we don't like can be able to see everything that's displayed when it's correct and when it's not, if can say that way. So for this, now this is what we call a collection pattern, where we try to match, okay, we try to match this should I call it object or variable against a certain pattern, but which is a collection pattern. But now this collection pattern, now it's kind of like tricky because it has two ways of doing a matching, right? So let me just comment here that collection pattern, I think that's how it's called, collection pattern. So in that case, now we try to, I said we have two matches, right? It tries to match two times. That's we have the outer match and the inner match, right? The outer pattern and the inner pattern. Now the outer pattern is that this is first of all, it first of all checks if this object is a list with two variables or with two fields. Yeah, let's use the word fields, with two fields in it. And then after that, it now goes inside to now match the constant fields to see, for example, if what we are providing in here is the same with what we are matching. That's for example to say if this a, if the value of this, because remember this a here is a variable, it's not, so it holds this letter a, which is actually a string, right? So it's going to compare if this string here is, if what this string is, if what this string is also what this string is, this a is going to compare if what this string is also the same as what this string is. So behind the scenes it has I think they call it the equal, the double, the equals operator. So something like this, it has something like this for equality. And also we're also going to talk about the other one as that, okay, it also generates we're going to see that it also generates another stuff that I've just forgotten, but I'm going to get back to it before we terminate the lecture, okay. So now let's get now into that, okay, let's get now into that and see example one. Okay, so now we get a and b printed. Okay, so now you say it's fine because it's normal a and b. What if we had something here like a? What if we pass this variable here? So it's going to still come out the same answer. But now the only time it's different is when we have something, for example, like this. We had a d here and maybe an e here, or maybe let's still leave the b. Okay, so if we set this, okay, we see we have something else simply because it matches, the outer pattern matches but the inner pattern don't, right? This a is not equivalent to a. This is, here we have a letter a and here we have letter d, and a is not equals to d, right? So that string, those strings are not kind of like equivalent, okay. So that's why we then move forward to pass that, okay. So we are going to talk about something else, okay. So, Just permit me to give it minutes. Okay, so now we're going to go to example 2. Okay, so let's go to example 2. Let me just close this. Okay, and create a new, nope, inside here set something like example 2 dot dot. Okay, so now in this example 2 dot dot, we are also going to talk about we're going to talk about object destructuring, right? So when an object when we have an object, right, and we try to match it, we can also still get that through some sort of pattern, right? So we access the objects, right, or the objects data, and then we extract it, right, from a specific list. So let's say for example uh we want to destructure something like this. Okay, so we have for example var num list is equals to 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so say we want to destructure this list, we want to destructure something like this in that, right, to be able to get like the equivalent like let's just say, yeah, destructure it. I guess you understand what I mean. So what we do is that we create variables, right? We create a var a, b and c, and then we are now going to, on the right hand side, what is going to be here is what we want to destructure. Okay, so it's going to be num list. Now these values here, which are actually here, each of these one has been like, this variable a has been created and we assigned the value 1, as well as b, c and abc. So if we were to print, for example, let's say a plus b plus c, let's say something like that. Okay, and then we clear this and we do that example. This is actually 2. Okay, let me close this. So if we did example 2, now we get a 6, because this is normally 1 plus 2, 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6. So we get a 6 down here. Okay, so this is basically how we can do destructuring. We can do destructuring in Dart. Okay, so now the place where patterns can appear, where I can make mention of that, is like local variable declarations, right? So we have some local variable declarations and assignments. We have the for and the for in loop. Okay, so we have the if case and switch case. We have control flow in collections later also. Or I'll try my best for us to cover some of them, not all. Okay, and I just recall that the other stuff I was talking about was actually hash code. Okay, for comparison. So it generates the double equals to, right, the double equals to sign. Okay, method, and then it also generates a hash code. So that's why we're going to see to that, but that's for something else, right? That's not for that type of comparison, but we're going to see that. So now let's dive into example 3. So example 3 is kind of like going to be long. It's going to be long. So let's say example 3 dot dot. Okay, now in this example 3 dot dot, we are first of all going to start with the first, which we're going to say remember I mentioned variable declaration. Okay, so now in this variable declaration, the pattern declaration must start with either a var or final. Okay, then you follow by your pattern, right? These are some of the rules that you have to use if you are to use a variable a declare variable for your pattern. So you need to start with var or final. Okay, so a basic example will be just what we did earlier. Okay, when we're doing variable declaration by something like this. Okay, just like what we had in example 2. Okay, we have something like this, and then we do something like str 1 maybe 6 here. Okay, so we have something like this, and if we try printing value a, and also why not you see. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead and print everything. You can try that on your own. So if we then went ahead and set example 3, okay, then we have this string here and number 6. Okay, so this is what we mean by variable declaration. So you can either start here with var or final, okay, and then it's followed by the pattern. The pattern matches, okay, the pattern which you want to match against, okay, on the right hand side. That's it. So also we're also going to go ahead and say variable assignment. Okay, now for variable assignment, it's where we destructure the match object, right? So we destructure the match object, then we assign the values to the existing variables, right? Instead of creating new ones or binding it to new ones. So let's just go into it so you better understand with this example. I've just explained. Okay, so let's say for example we had this left, okay, and we had here right. Okay, so now what we actually do here, okay, let me just a and b are already defined, so let me just comment, no, let me just separate this by some lines. So we have something like this, okay, and let's use something like D and E, okay. So we have something like this, and then what we're not going to do is that we are going to do some variable assignment. So we're going to say E here and then D, but now we're going to say D, okay, and E, and if we now print E, let's put a comma and then D. So this is what we mean by variable assignment. It means instead of us getting new values or creating new variables, okay, we just use the existing ones which are there, and it's going to bind the results of this to this, right? So this here will be extracted, and now like the new will now be pointing to this what is found in the D, in the variable D. Okay, so if we were to do that, if you're kind of like smart enough, you see that this is like a swap, right? So it's not even like it's actually swapping, we're swapping what's here. So we'll say that example 3, I will see here left right. Oh, I think I kind of like forgot to change this. Okay, so here we have D and E, and I think here we're supposed to have, no, that's actually correct. I think I was supposed to bring it this way. Yeah, print it like this so that we actually see it coming out as that. Okay, so yeah, so now this is the D now is equivalent to the right, and now the E is equivalent to the left. While initially here we see that here D is left and then E is right. Okay, so that's just what has happened here. So E, which was holding right, is now holding left, which is what this D contains. Okay, so that's that for that. So you actually see that patterns are kind of like pretty solid to use. Okay, pretty solid to use, and as we keep moving, we're going to see use cases of them. So now the other case now is with switch cases. Okay, is with switch statements and expressions. Now patterns are refutable, right? So they are refutable, meaning that a pattern can be tested against a value to determine if it matches it or not, right? And if it doesn't match that value, okay, then it means it denies, so the pattern denies or refutes the match, right? So let me just take it back again. So patterns being refutable means that if the pattern it means the pattern can be tested against the value, right? So now if we have a certain pattern like we have here, when we're testing it against a value, okay, now the match of it is either going to be true or false, right, to determine if they match. And if they match, then it's going to be fine. It's going to, let me use the word, resolve the value, right? But if not, it's going to deny or refute, means it's going to refuse it or deny. Okay, so that's like another way of putting it. Okay, so uh, in that case, now we're going to have something like this. Okay, so I'm not going to go into something too complex, so we're going to say switch. We're still going to switch on this object which we have above there. I think that was in example 1, so we're going to have case 1. Okay, and we're just going to say print 1, and then we're now going to say case. Okay, we're going to say var a comma var b, and then we're going to print, okay, a is equals to, let's call this, okay, and this like this. So let's just provide the default. Okay, default statement, you just say print or something else. So let's just say something else, and then we are going to try to see this here in the console to just make sure that it's actually something else. So we're going to say const object, let's just say it's equals to 1. Okay, for the first case. So in that scenario, now we can do this. If we say example 3, okay, we get 1 because of what I explained earlier concerning switch cases. Okay, so it's going to try to match. Okay, it's going to get this pattern and try to match it against this. If it matches, then now it goes ahead now and produces the result, or else it just refutes it, right? So if not, we'll fall into this case here. Okay, so we have printed for 1. Okay, so now let's say if we had something maybe like a list, let's say here we had something like 1 and 2. Okay, so let's clear this and run this again. Now we see something else, 1 and 2. Okay, because it doesn't match this. It came here. Okay, it refutes because it doesn't match the pattern here doesn't match this. Okay, so it's likewise here. But if we were to do something like this, okay, if we were to do something like this, okay, and we clear our terminal and we run this again, then we get A is 1 and B is this, right? Because this match, right? It checks if it's an object with this type of notation, right? Int, right? With the curly brace, with the braces, the parentheses, okay, open. And now if it has 2 fields, right? These 2 fields, and now it just assigns them because these are variables, right? It doesn't actually do any comparison here. It just assigns this here to here and this here to here, and then we print it out. Okay, so that's that for that. Okay, now I think we're also going to talk about the last part. Okay, so that's just what. So we also have switch expressions, but before going to switch expressions, I don't know, like if you kind of like understood, like if this maybe is still blurry, right? So it checks, right? It checks, or if this object, right, matches, if it has 2 fields, if it has these 2 fields, right, in this stuff, because it's actually a record. I didn't just want to get into records right now, but let me just say this is actually a record, right? So it's actually a record, and then it checks if this record matches this, right? If it also has 2 fields, and then if it has 2 fields, okay, fine, then it just assigns this value. So I just wanted to use the parentheses, not getting into records as of now, but it's fine. It's good that you really know what we call by using the records. So, and here you say it's already showing us here a dead code because actually it matches. But if we had something else here like this, okay, yeah, then this is a valid case. I think this is just because here that is trying to be smarter. That static analyzer is trying to be smarter a lot enough by already comparing these values ahead of time. Okay, it only goes and start comparing and actually shows us where already resolves this, but if this was hidden in a function, then it won't be able to see that. Okay, so you can go ahead and try that on your own. So now the last thing I'd like to talk about is switch expressions, right? Switch expressions. Now, just like we have functions, right? We have functions, and we have also functions, function expressions. Okay, so do we also have switch expressions? I think in that you can store a function. Yeah, you can store. Yeah, we do that. So what then is it? So we can have something like is number. Okay, we could just check if something is a number. Okay, and then we could switch. Okay, we could switch on that certain value. Okay, and then we just do something like this. So we say, let me just create. Let's just say if it is num. Okay, so we're just going to check if it is an integer or something like that. So let's say we have var value. Okay, let's say it is 1, then we come here and then to check if we're just having if it is an integer. Okay, we're just going to use the int. Okay, int dot try parse. Okay, so obviously this takes in a string, so we're just going to pass in this value here. Okay, this value here, and then we're just going to resolve to true, or else we're just going to say this is false. Okay, inside this isn't the type, try the name match of an existing type. So I don't know why we're getting this error here, but I think I'll go with something a little bit more simpler. Okay, so say for example we had let's just say some random numbers. So we had, so say for example number, okay, is equals to 0. Okay, and then we just want to say var is let's just say is primary. Let's just go something like that. Something just very fancy. So we're just going to say if the number, okay, we're going to try to switch then and say for example if it is a 1. Okay, maybe we're trying to check if what we're getting maybe from our database is a 1 or a 4 or an 8. Okay, then we're just going to return true. No, we're just going to return true, or we're just going to return false. Okay, so now in this case, okay, now and then let's try to print. Let's print this is primary. Okay, now this is primary. Now basically what we do here is that we just take this number here, right? Just take this number and then we're going to do a comparison here, and if it is true then we can return, and if it's false here, if it is either a 1, a 4, an 8, right, we return true, or else we return false. Now this underscore here in that is called a wildcard. Okay, a wildcard, so it's just there to say whatever the value that we get, whatever value that's here, right, it's just like a default clause. Okay, it's just like a default clause. Okay, and then we'll just say that okay, whatever that comes here, just return false. If it is not up here, just return false. Okay, so if I clear my terminal and I say for example dart example 3, okay, we see false. But if this was an 8, okay, if this was an 8, then we get true. Okay, so I just wanted to go with something basic like that. So let's close this and go to example 4. Okay, example 4 dart. Okay, so let's close this. Now with example 4 dart, what we're going to do here is that we are not going to use patterns in a for. Now this is the other case I was talking about, using patterns in for and for in loops, right, to iterate over and destructure values in a collection. So how then do we achieve that using a pattern, right? So we come up with our main. Okay, so we have our map here, which is actually a string, an int, and let's just say frequency. Okay, let's just call it frequency. I just think I'll just go something basic like that, frequency. And let's just say here we have an A, which maybe let's say appears 20 times. Okay, we have a B, say we're reading maybe a book or a novel, or we just wanted to count the number of appearances of these letters of the alphabet, but we're not going to go into everything, just these three. Okay, so maybe something here like 15 or maybe 12. Yeah, so we have something like that. And now we have a for in loop. Okay, this for in loop, we're not going to say map. Okay, map entity. Now before we get into the map entity, let me just get to the element first. Let me leave it like that. So we have frequency. Now this frequency exposes something called entries. Okay, these entries, and on these entries, as you can see, it's an iterable. We're going to get into collections and expand more on that. So it's a map entry. Okay, it's a map entry of string int, right? So if we get here, now this map entry, so now this is just like the source code of what I'm trying to show you, right? To be able to see that it's map entry of kv, right? Of kv. So this kv here is just the key and the value, and it was able to, that's like generic parameter where it was able to now get it from here, string and int. Now this map entry now by default has something called like this map entry. Okay, map entry, which is a getter. So it calls getter, it calls the getter key, because it has a key, right? We can see it has a key, it has a value, right? So this this map entry here has a getter called key. Okay, it has a key which we can use here as this key from here without any issue, and it also has a value. Okay, and we can still say value. Okay, we can still go ahead and say value. Okay, and if we wanted to go ahead and print something like print something like key. Okay, key or code value times. Okay, something like this. Okay, so something like this. Okay, key or code value times, clear the terminal, and I do that example 4 this time. Okay, so now we see a occurred not in 20 times. Excuse about that. So we just say if this, so a occurred 20 times, b occurred 30, and 12 times. Okay, so this is another way of doing it, right? But from those of we could still simplify this, right, by binding the results directly, since what we're having here, we have here a key and a key. Okay, we could just do something like this. Okay, could just remove this. Okay, and it will still be valid. Okay, so if we clear a terminal, okay, and we did that, so it's some sort of having a parameter just for these patterns only. Okay, which uses the same name as the parameter has the same name as maybe the field that we are trying to use, right? Like for example, this value here, this key, right? So it's it that we just simplify it. So let me just put it here. So this becomes this. Okay, just becomes this. Okay, so it's just some sort of simplification that we are doing here in order to simplify this, so we don't want to find ourselves repeating, right? Repeating something like this. Okay, so there's that, and then we're going to dive into the last example, which is actually example 4. example 5, sorry. And also to kind of like dive into more details, right? Because like I said, this is some kind of like record, right? Some kind of records, and it returns another. Well, we're going to get into records, and know that records do allow aggregate and return multiple values, right? Multiple values from a single call function, right? So now what we're actually doing is that this pattern here is giving us the ability to destructure the records field, right? So another destructuring again, right? So we're destructuring the records fields directly into local variables. So this records field here, these fields that we're having here, right? We're destructuring them directly into these local variables called key and value. And for us to be able to do that, they have to be of the same type. Okay, like if it's key here, then it has to be key. If it is maybe if it is was, let's say, mango, the mango, then it still has to be the same thing. We still have to do something like mango if we wanted to get this value here, right? But if you see, if I had something, for example, here is a key. If I say something like, for example, hello, okay, I clear here and I tried running this, then we're going to get into an error, right? Because this doesn't exist. And if we get here, we see that here we have key, right? We have the key available. That's it. So this is it here. So that's that for that. And yeah, so let's dive into the last example, which is going to be all about patterns using classes. Okay, so we're going to start with a simple class here. Say blah. Okay, we're going to start with a simple class that calls say blah. Excuse. So we're going to get that into a simple class say blah, and we're going to have string. We're going to have two fields. So final string, going to call it 1. Okay, and the next one we're going to have final int, we're going to call it 2, and then we're going to generate a constructor, say blah. Okay, so we're going to say they are required this dot 1 and they are required this dot 2. Okay, so come here and this is it. So now we want to see how we can destructure an instance of a class, how that is done using patterns. Okay, so let me close this and remove this. So we want to see how that is done. So we do that by using the name type, right? The name type of the class followed by the properties I want to destructure enclosed in parentheses. So let me get back to it again. So use the name type followed by the properties of the properties I want to destructure enclosed in parentheses. So what do I then mean by that? So say final blah, okay, which is a name type, okay, and then we can say my blah blah, okay, we can say my blah blah is equals to blah, then we create now. So here we said it was taking in a string, right? So here and then here we said an integer, so let's say 2, right? And then we can so here, okay, yes, so here we'll continue now. Set var, okay, so we'll set the name type, which is blah here, and then we can just go ahead with 1, okay, and 2, which my blah blah is holding. Okay, and we can just go now and print and just print underscore 1, okay, and then 2. So we can start here by saying 1 and saying here 2. Okay, so we can clear this off. So if you kind of like notice, is the same thing. It's basically the same thing we did in the previous example, which was example 4, right? So we had these fields here, these fields, and then we are able to do the same thing, right? The name instance, okay, the name type, okay, the name type, which is actually blah, the name of the class, okay, followed by the properties that we want to destructure in parentheses. So since we don't want to come and rewrite this and that, so we just use this as we did for map entries, okay. So this is like another instance of this blah class, but now still destructuring it as in a record format, right directly into local variables, this one and two, but they have to be the same as the parameters that we are using. So if we do this, then we have no, not example 4, that example 5. Okay, so we get now 1 and 2. Okay, so that's that. When it comes to using patterns in that, they are very very useful. Okay, with this newly introduced features, they're very useful. And we're also going to now, in the next chapter, we're going to be going into records, I guess. Okay, so these are patterns and they can help you a lot write better, cleaner code. Okay, so you just need to play around with them, get familiar with them, and know that you've seen fingertips. So that's all. So thanks for watching, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video to help increase the algorithm, YouTube's algorithm, so that the video can get to other people. And yeah, thanks for watching.